Chapter 5. The Hung and Scarred. Stephanie. Stephanie breathed in the cold February air that slipped through the mangled city and opened her eyes. Fresh dew pouring from overhead clouds. The smell of food rotting away from maggots became muffled. Stephanie was sitting down on the wet sidewalk curb. She was drenched in solace. After discussing with Jane and Colin about Brandon joining them, she needed to sit down. Glancing behind herself, she gaped at the knocked-over chair behind her. Jane was sitting there just a minute or two ago, but then she was attacked by a demon pouncing from high above and knocking her over, and a scuffle ensued. Looking around aimlessly, scrounging for details and art to gorge her mind on, Stephanie paid attention to her surroundings more. The building that laid behind her, it was as dead as the deceased that slept the streets. If any flamelet of life was held in this building before, it was surely gone after the aerial bombings, about 2 months prior. The entities must have only recently ventured out this far. That explains why I haven't seen any scorch marks left by the bombs. It was silent for a bit, maybe 2 to 3, 4 to 5, 6 to 7 minutes had passed since the last fully formed thought had been expressed inward. It was hard to think of anything other than the decaying, the soil, the roads, cracked sidewalks, and filthy grass. So many, still stained with sin, unable to repent. She could feel it forming, and soon felt it, a tear on the brink of diving into the puddle of aquatic scars that marked her face. There were so many already. Content with being surrounded by the trash that suffocated the city and so many others, Stephanie was fiddling with one of Colin's fidgets. Colin and Jane were 4 above her. The building and most others around and in the city were in the style of what was called stacked architecture. Like a mall, the architectural style has multiple levels, with some having escalators and elevators. She was bored of that style. No life in them, rarely any plants. They were designed to pack as many stores and other things, like fast food chains and retail chains. Most stacked architecture also had above-ground transit systems, monorails all above the sidewalks, sometimes on the ground, like the one that threw her into a building the minutes prior. The rails were made of titanium, the fillings of crimson red, smiles of yellow, and striking pale cream lights, all adorned the pillars that upheld the simplistic monorail tracks, tracing the city blocks. They were cleaner than what lay beneath them. Just neon lights now blind the skies, any available ad space worth the money. After all, the world's colors are monochrome, and only the foolish dream in technicolor. Stephanie's eyes dragged around and finally landed on a hole. It was just like the hole in the wall that Stephanie made being thrown through it. There it was, another one behind her, behind the chair that Jane sat on. She stared at it intensely, as if she was trying to size up the hole, trying to one-up it. Sound narrowed into her ears. Serenity? No, just focusing. An alien pouring of sound. His voice, his words, odorous, shapeless sounds because of the rain and distance. It was Colin, trying to yell over the cloaking rain. Why is he yelling? She thought to herself. Is he arguing with Jane? Stephanie listened to Colin arguing. His voice, calm, his words, a litter of sharp, jagged, and obtuse sounds because of the rain. It was hard to tell what he was saying, or how he was saying anything, whatever it was. Whether an argument on both sides, or just one, Stephanie minded it. She started murmuring incoherently. Jane never took crap from anyone. Even though it's been around 6 years since they last saw each other, and not even a word exchanged, she still believed it. She was always cool-headed, concise, collected, and at times cold. But she was kind and joking for the majority of knowing and growing up with her. Now she's just cold. Stephanie then violently shook her head, as if she strongly disagreed with her own thought and conclusion. Regardless of the pain from the whiplash she inflicted on herself, her imagination sprung into work as she fantasized about all of them walking into a better world. This beautiful world where everything was back to normal. Me and Jane being sisters again. Colin being open and happy with me. Her fantasy expanded a bit more. Now, the world was holding hands across all races, ethnicities, nationalities, and religions, and everything was great, holy, and enlightening. Just imagine it. A world of thick forests, clean seas, and water. Unlimited food and water. Worldwide peace. No racism, no homophobia, no drugs, alcohol, slaves, corruption, or greed. Just peace. All people walking to the divine gates of heaven itself. She could feel it. The warm and inviting hug of the heavens. Absolute bliss. She continued scaling the stairs, all falling behind her, none ahead of her. This was it. Stephanie opened her arms for an embrace, crossing the veil of the gates, and a jolt of pain stabbed her in the back. Stephanie's spine was still in stark pain. She really should be resting. This forced her back to reality, but she was calm and content. At least, on the outside she was. "Hey, are you alright? You've been just sitting there for the past couple minutes," Brandon said inquisitively. "Oh, yeah. I'm fine. Nothing to worry about." Stephanie took a deep breath. The helmets they wore covered their entire head, very little in terms of ventilation, besides the 6 holes on each side of the mask. "Are you able to stand up stably? I heard from that Jane girl that you got caught in the middle of an explosion. How's your spine?" "I have faith it'll heal. I'm really, I'm fine. It's nothing to worry about," she said confidently. "Okay then. Well, I'll just be in the building across the street up north if you want to talk more." After she watched Brandon enter the building he mentioned, Stephanie began to try to stand up. The pain felt suffocating, like being hung by a noose. Thousands of piercing needles lanced her lower back. The wall. This pain, all because of that damn long train. Not even to mention that bomb. Ugh! Stephanie groaned in anger and looked up towards the building's roof that laid behind. She watched as Jane walked to the edge of the roof and looked at the other building up across the street. It was an abandoned business complex. Maybe? Business complex, or whatever it used to be. It looked to be forsaken for a decade or two, probably used as a squatter destination, or a shelter for the homeless. Stephanie looked closer at the building and noticed a known organization's flag, the Mockingbirds flag. The Mockingbirds were known as an anti-rich or tax-the-rich-like organization, a group of Robin Hoods that operated by the law and pragmatic reasoning. A flame of euphoric knowledge steadily hummed inside. Stephanie used to memorize some of their entire articles and looked up to them for unbiased, well-written, detailed articles about all spectrums of social and political issues. She focused on the flag once more and saw something hanging behind it. It was hard to tell if anything was there because maybe, just maybe, it was an illusion because of the rain and her uniform's water-soiled visor. After a second or two of waiting, she moved to get a better view. Walking down the road, she grabbed the compass hooked to her waist. The pain in her spine taunted her every step. The compass faced north, the same direction she was going. The barren building was to her right, facing northeast, the direction of their final destination. The first ever, cross-dimensional, gateway. Station 1. Hard to believe that technology has come that far. The 21st century, 20th century, etc. Centuries of massive technological innovations and advancements. or so says the old history books. Stephanie looked back to the building Jane and Colin were in, and then back to the building to her right. This one wasn't the same carbon copy design of stacked architecture. In fact, it was just a tall office building. Stephanie gazed up at the desolate building, its dull walls covered with moss and other greenery. The building was a husk of what may once have been a respected establishment. It didn't help that it was plastered with graffiti. As a kid, and still now, Stephanie loved walking around the neighborhood and other parts of Jason Brock to go searching for graffiti. The form of art captivated her. A little art appreciation never hurt anyone. With that, Stephanie walked over to the other side of the office. One of the graffiti caught her eye. It was the Valkyrie symbol, with a red stripe sliced through it, and underneath it read, "All a lie." All a lie, huh? Well, maybe that lie probably saved your life, you ungrateful bastard. Instead of going inside, Stephanie peered through the tall, dusty windows near the front entrance. Inside was a typical lobby in these kinds of establishments. A front desk, elevators, and a lounge. It was generic, nothing new. She turned back around and walked over to the building left of her, the one Brandon mentioned. Passing under the ever-increasing shadow of the New York-style underpass, passing by the public Android chargers that usually bark their exuberant prices. A hefty price of $100 for every bar filled. $300 was the common price for normal Android charging. She hardly paid attention to the chargers. Stephanie never did. She loved art, often saw it as having more personality than people, but corporate art, or things of that nature, no. They hung from the ceiling like the arms of lifeless bodies. Just like the soulless, emotional bodies, they filled with power. 3 parts made up its shape: the shoulder, forearm, and the hand or plug. Their tubes were bent like joint muscles and wiring, cables and cords like arteries and nerves, yet still no life. The 3 parts all washed with weathering and erosion, chipping the multi-blues, dulling the vibrant orange, snuffing the trims of burning gold, and corrupting the purest white, a child of neglect. Stephanie walked into the building. Unlike the one she was sitting in front of before, this one was in far better shape, but not by much. The windows were mostly intact, if not dirty and cracked. It was far more clear what the building used to be. The lobby floors were made of what was likely cheap tan carpet. The floor was devoured by molds and fungus. They scaled the exposed drywall and the inner wall beams. The smell was almost preferred over the smell of the rotting flesh and food that was to come after the drowning shower. Brandon turned his shoulder and peered at Stephanie. "Quite a building." Stephanie didn't respond for a moment. She was lost in her fantasies. Yeah, I guess that's true. I still haven't gotten used to the city's look. It's been 6 or 7 years since I joined, and the surrounding of every city I've been to always had something different, Brandon said calmly and slowly. He was easier to understand as he wasn't wearing his helmet. I've never paid much attention to the decor. I don't like to go outside of my homestay, Stephanie said a little coldly. She didn't want to talk at the moment, but she admitted to herself that it was nice to talk to someone, something to break up the xylophone plucks outside, splashing the pools of sound and solace, at least for right now. Brandon turned his head away from Stephanie. Interesting. Why's that? Silence answered him. She wasn't there, only her silhouette walking down the hall, past the lobby. Bye? She walked through the halls. The pictures framed on the walls were of a high-rise skyline and other miscellaneous things. She continued walking down until she felt a dip. She peered down. Scratch marks. She followed the chicken scratch scrapes to a door. The door was white and dirtied. The sign above it read, "Staff only." The door was also covered in deep, jagged cuts, but the gashes they weren't part of the door. The paint was chipped. They were fresh. Likely. Stephanie quickly pressed down on the radio button. A simple button that, when held down, opens radio communication, located above the left side of the chest. Stephanie spoke. "Fresh claw marks in the hotel's first floor stairwell. Over." Brandon spoke up first. "Copy that. Coming. Over." Then Jane. "Be there in a minute." And then lastly Colin. "Copy that." Brandon spoke once more, over the radio. "Remember to follow protocol and say it over when you're done speaking on the radio. Please. Over." Stephanie waited. Everyone was there in under a minute. Riot shotguns in hand, fully loaded and cocked. This was something all of them were used to. The tense feeling when you have no idea what to expect, but are armed. It was a unique feeling, nothing quite like it. Never wanted. Brandon, from the wall, slowly leaned in front of the door and grabbed the handle firmly. Without speaking a word, they all knew what to do. It was the basic procedure. As soon as Brandon turned that handle, they'd storm the area, quickly and vigilantly. Starting with 3, 2, 1. The door swung open. They rushed through the stairwell, step by step. All the doors were locked. No one could get in without extreme force. All but the rooftop's door. One by one, they flew through the open door onto the roof. And what they saw was worse than what they expected. Something thought out and cool. She stared in shock and horror. Stephanie's eyes locked on the 3 hanging bodies. Their dead, glazed eyes gazed back into her soul, into all of their souls. The hung men's faces were brutally carved in, a constellation-like symbol. Deep into their flesh, blood covered their fermented faces. They swung from the ceiling like wilted leaves in the winter breeze.